So I'm Mark Harmon. I'm the Strategic Director of eConsult and also an A&E doctor. So I'm going to talk today about a problem that we use technology to solve, well, trying to solve. So myself and a group of doctor colleagues, about 7 years ago, faced with, well, the same problem most healthcare systems are faced currently in terms of inundated with demand, finite resources, struggling to recruit clinicians. So we looked at technology to see how we could try to solve this problem, because we started life in general practice and patients were coming into general practice first come, first serve on a telephone and not really seeing any clinical order. So we looked at a number of different options to see how we could try to work out the clinical acuity of the patients before they turn up at the wrong door, because about 30% of patients turn up inappropriately at GP or A&E. So we started life about 7 years ago, we looked at Skype, we looked at video conferencing, we looked at SMS, we looked at email. But we landed on a web-based platform using an algorithm where we ask clinical questions of the patients in their own time through the web. So basically they go on the practice website and we write clinical content for common presented complaints, so back pain, abdominal pain, headache, etc. And there's an algorithm with intelligence built in behind the scenes that then routes patients to the most appropriate place for their particular presenting complaint. So, and that's then submitted in a standardized form into the GP. So we started that in a group of practices we run in South East London, 10 practices, 100,000 patients. And actually we're starting to see some significant benefit, because we're then starting to be able to see patients by clinical order rather than chronological order. And there's a couple of practices in a neighbouring CCG commissioning group who looked at this and said, actually, we quite like this. Would you commercialise it? So we had no intention to commercialise this. It's really just a problem we're trying to solve for ourselves. So we then commercialised the product, and through COVID, obviously, that became rapidly adopted. So we went through to 3,500 practices, and in the meantime, we're starting to see the benefits of triage. So we then started to think, actually, if we can solve a problem at the front door of general practice, we can potentially solve the problem at the front door of A&E and outpatients as well, because it's faced with similar problems and finite resources. So the patient flow through the product is patient goes on to the website or onto NHS app now. We have the options for self-care, local pharmacy, to refer to local services like MSK, for instance, musculoskeletal, physiotherapy, or you get the option as a patient to consult with your GP. You go through an online consultation, so we take a clinical history from the patient in their own time at home. It takes about 10 minutes to complete. Algorithms, built-in intelligence, so if it's something more severe, we'll route you off to A&E. And then that comes into the practice, and the practice team then triage that list of patients by clinical need. And the efficiency saving really is actually by having the history up front. You know how serious that patient is, who's best suited to manage that patient in the practice, be that a nurse, a GP, a physiotherapist. But also, you can save patients a trip to the surgery. So for 70% of patients of eConsults that come in don't actually need a face-to-face appointment. So some of them can be managed by repeat prescription, by self-help advice, others by a video call, a telephone call. And of those remaining 30% who do come in, that 10-minute consultation is much richer, because you know why they're coming in, you know what they're coming in with, and you can do some pre-work if need be. Through COVID, obviously as surgeries and practices sort of shut down, that remote management became even more significant. So about 90% of patients would come in online and wouldn't actually require a face-to-face appointment. So saving clinical time, saving patients unnecessary visits, but also presenting cross-contamination infection. Pardon?
Do you have access to any patient using the NHS app?
Say again?
Do you have access to any patients using the
Yes,
NHS app?
yeah. So anybody who's listed on the NHS app can come in via eConsult. Yeah. So, and we do about 1.2 million a month. Last month we did our 30 millionth eConsult. So we're getting quite good at this, and we've got lots of data. So we saw that there were significant benefits to be had in general practice. So 4 years ago we started actually building a product for A&E, which is faced with similar issues, patients turning up inappropriately the front door of A&E, I work in A&E, probably 30 to 40% of patients, it's not an emergency. They don't need to be there. But the danger is not knowing who's sick and who isn't. Because if you've got to wait, when I went into work last week, there was a 13-hour wait in A&E to be seen by a doctor. So in that time, you've got patients in a waiting room that you've got no visibility of. You don't know who's sick and who isn't. So what we want to do is use technology to actually triage patients at the front door of their journey in. So within 5 minutes, we know who they are, how sick they are, and where they need to go, whether they can be redirected back to the GP, whether they need to come into resus and be resuscitated.
If
So
you
this
move
is
closer, we can hear them. If you want to move right up, why don't we shove these a bit closer?
Yeah.
Squeeze in the sides.
come closer. Anyway, so this is when eTriage, our second product, was born. So, sorry. Bit further. I'll see you. Anyway, most of you will have been to A&E at some point in your life. It's a pretty horrible process. You wait to be triaged. If you're lucky, you triage in 15 minutes. You then wait, and if you're lucky, in the old days, you'd be seen within 4 hours. Now it's sort of 12, 13 hours before you see a decision maker. But it's a pretty laborious process. It's very inefficient. And it's actually very dangerous from a patient point of view. So we wanted to reinvent that A&E journey using digital triage. So the idea being now, so what if patients actually walk into an A&E, they're met with a bank of iPads, there's never a wait, so we map the number of iPads to the demand. On the iPads, we ask their name, their demographics, we look up their NHS number, validate who they are, and then we take a very, very quick triage history. So what's the problem, why are they there, how sick are they? And behind the scenes, an algorithm is working out how sick that patient is and dropping them into 5 priority buckets. P1, actually a life-threatening emergency, chest pain, radiating down the arm. To P5, actually this patient is fine to redirect it back to general practice. We're also working with some software developers at the moment on, at the same time as getting that history, we're getting your vital signs through a camera. This is quite space-age tech. So we're getting your heart rate, your blood pressure, your SATs. And then we're consolidating that up into a clinical risk score and then pushing you through automatically to the most appropriate place within the department or outside of hospital. And this all happens within 5 minutes of patients walking through the front door. So historically, you'd have a waiting room or a queue. Most A&Es now have a queue out into the car park. It's totally undifferentiated. You don't know who's sick and who isn't. And it can take an hour and a half for that queue to get through the front door. Now, within 5 minutes, we know exactly who's in that waiting room, who's the sickest, and we can pull off by clinical need. And we can also redirect away and manage demand that way. So we can auto-triage, so we're automatically triaging patients, we're automatically screening patients to the most appropriate place, whether that's minors, majors, GP. And it's also enabling redirection back to other services. So this is our first site, this is what it looks like. It's never been that quiet since, by the way. But there's a bank of iPads, patients check in, the receptionists are trained to help patients as well. We're now live in 10 sites. We've done over 500,000 A&E triages to date now. Takes about 5 minutes to check in and triage. Age doesn't seem to be a problem, so over 26% of patients are over 65 and above. Our oldest patient's 103. And we're picking up a number of clinical life-threatening conditions within minutes. So we've got lots of anecdotal case studies where we picked up brain hemorrhage within 3 minutes, heart attacks, aneurysm ruptures that otherwise would have been sitting outside in the car park, collapsed potentially. Time to clinical decision maker has been reduced, so we're speeding the throughput through the department, and also time to initial assessment. So the initial assessment should take place with the Royal College of Emergency Medicine guidelines within 15 minutes of you walking through the front door. Currently, the average is about 1.5 hours. So we're enabling all those patients coming in to be initially assessed by a nurse within 15 minutes. So really important for patient safety. And these are a number of our trusts we're currently in. What we're really excited about, though, is our integration with InterSystems, which we've recently concluded, and that will then open up all the other hospital trusts to enable us to integrate. Because the important thing is here, we have to integrate into the system. It can't be another system sitting on top. And our integration into Iris will help us accelerate our integration space. The third door, if you like, we've got general practice, we've got A&E. Now, the third door we're looking at for triage is outpatients. So we've built a product now called eSpecialist, which actually triages outpatients. So that's 7 million backlog of people waiting for an elective outpatient procedure how do you know who's sick, who's improved, who doesn't need to come in, who needs to come in sooner? And historically, you'd be referred for an outpatient. If you need further tests, the specialist would have to get back to you, organise tests. Often you get better, but you still attend, it'd be a waste of appointment. Or you get better, but you didn't attend, so it would be another waste of appointment. Or worse, you got worse and had to be redirected somewhere else because you were becoming sicker. So by a specialist triage up front of your outpatient appointment, so you'd be triaged to outpatients, and then the specialist would send you a specialist set of questions that they would have asked you in the first appointment, but they ask you ahead of that, enables them to order investigations, to take you off the list if you've improved, to prioritise you if you've got worse, and also, once you've been discharged, to then follow up. So it gives you an option to then follow up. We call it patient-initiated follow-up. So after surgery, for instance, and your symptoms worsen, you can then contact your specialist through the specialist route. So the big thinking here, though, on the back of what we're doing with InterSystems, is actually if we can join these three doors together and create a digital triage ecosystem, then the benefits, the efficiencies that will generate for the system by routing patients to the right place first time, every time, and also to the right clinician, will not only improve efficiency, but also improve patient outcomes. So we're talking, our next bit of strategic work is now to join these doors together and route patients from between primary care. So if you come in primary care through the app and actually it's something more serious, we can route you into A&E digitally. So your consultation will go ahead. We'll give you a booking. We'll book you into an A&E appointment. Likewise into an outpatient. So if you came in with back pain in primary care that actually turned out to be prostate cancer, we could route you straight into a cancer two-way pathway. So going from 3 entry points into one. So I'm working as a triage platform, using InterSystems as our back end that then integrates us into the hospital infrastructure. We're also working with a number of strategic partners, particularly through the NHS, and we're setting up partnership and enterprise contracts with some major trust to help us innovate, because we're all learning at the same time. We're constantly evolving and innovating. But the idea is we go from an inefficient, disconnected triage to a triage ecosystem, from silos to an integrated system, from face-to-face to remote where possible, and from slow, outdated decision-making to rapid, sophisticated and accurate decision-making. Final slide, we've just done an impact assessment with Ernst & Young on actually the benefits to the system, and the benefits they believe currently, as eConsult in its current state, are between 1 and 1.6 billion pounds worth of saving to the system. If it is used to a maximal effect, that can be up to 2.6 billion pounds worth of saving. This isn't taking into account patient outcomes as well, by the way. So with that, I shall let you get back to the more interesting things, but thank you for listening.